Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Korea's exports in June hit a record high, surpassing $100 billion for the first time. This makes Korea the fourth country in the world to exceed the $100 billion mark for monthly exports, following the US, China, and Germany. The United States and Iran concluded a round of indirect talks in Qatar's capital. U.S. President Donald Trump hailed the meetings as very good, while Tehran also announced plans to establish a communication channel with Washington to report any possible violations of the deal signed 2 weeks ago. Despite efforts to search for survivors, the death toll from last week's devastating earthquakes in Venezuela has risen to nearly 2,300. The country's interim president has declared 7 days of mourning for the victims. South Korea's June exports topped $100 billion for the first time, reaching a record high and making the country only the fourth in the world to achieve the feat. Our Lee Ji-yeon reports.
Korea's June export hit a new all-time high, topping $100 billion for the first time. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources said Wednesday that June exports surged roughly 71% from a year earlier to $102.25 billion. That makes Korea only the fourth country to record more than $100 billion in exports in a single month, after Germany, China, and the United States. Exports increased in 18 of the 20 major categories in June, with semiconductor leading the overall growth. Semiconductor exports surged roughly 200% from a year earlier to $44.8 billion. Beating the previous record set in May, monthly chip exports topped $40 billion for the first time. The strong momentum has raised hopes that Korea's annual exports could reach $1 trillion this year, with the government expressing optimism about the target.
We see a much stronger chance of reaching the $1 trillion milestone now than we did back in May. Exports tend to gather more momentum in the second half of the year than the first, which underpins our positive outlook.
Meanwhile, imports rose 30% from a year earlier, but Korea still posted a record trade surplus of more than $30 billion in June. Still, the government warned that uncertainties remain, including chip price movements, volatility in global oil markets, and growing protectionist measures. Officials said they will work closely with key trading partners to reduce risk for Korean exporters and help remain a stable export environment. Lee Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And now for more on last month's record high exports, we're joined today by Professor Shin Se-don, professor at the Division of Business Economics at Sookmang Women's University. Professor Sen, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning.
So Korea's exports reached a record high last month and it surpassed the $100 billion mark for the first time. How significant is this milestone, and do you expect this momentum to continue in the coming months?
I would say this is pretty monumental in the sense that we never had a $100 billion monthly export throughout our entire economic history, and that is one thing. And also, we are expecting to reach $1 trillion exports for the year 2026. So it's just pretty monumental, and it is good sign that, this year's economic growth will possibly be reach 3%. In the case when, everybody expected that it's going to be very difficult to reach 2% economic growth, early this year. So I think, monumental achievement.
I see. And turning to the foreign exchange market, the Japanese yen has fallen to its lowest level in 40 years, right? What's behind this move?
Well, I will point out two things. One is that the Japanese interest rate has been very low, mostly in the negative just 2 years ago, and then they decided to raise it slowly, very slowly, now at the 1% point, which is about 2.5% lower than the United States. So I think the lowest Japanese interest rate is the prime reason for the weakest yen on the one hand. And another potential possibility is that United States is going to raise, rate hike this year, at least once. So on the one hand, the Japanese interest rate has been too low, and on the other, United States is expected to raise their interest rate. And that, I think, is going to increase the rate gap between United States and Japan, and that's going to trigger, Japanese exchange rate go up still further above 160.
I see. And the Korean won is also at its weakest level in more than a decade. And some analysts say the exchange rate could even go over 1,600 Korean won in the second half of this year. What's your take on this?
Well, 1,600 could be possible, for a few days, maintaining at the level. But on the average, it's going to be very difficult to stay above 1,550. So I think even if, the rate goes up beyond the 1,600, that's going to be a pretty short term kind of interruption. And mostly, I think the rate will be staying around 1,500 and 1,550. So I think it's going to stabilize sooner or later, throughout the latter half of 2026.
Right, and in the stock market, it's been 30 years since the KOSPI stock market was launched in 1996. But while the KOSPI surged 98% so far this year, the KOSDAQ has remained largely flat. Why has the KOSDAQ struggled to regain investors' trust?
Well, as you know, KOSDAQ is composed of hundreds of small and medium-sized enterprise, and contrast to the big, corporations like Samsung or Hynix, small and medium-sized enterprises lack, human power, and also are deficient in capital, and deficient in government support, and deficient in technology. So for the last 30 years, the index has been staying around 1,000. Currently, below 100,000. So KOSDAQ has a fundamental inherent kind of deficiencies, and that I think has caused the people to not to believe in the strength of KOSDAQ. So it's going to be a long task for the government if government wants to kind of revitalize the KOSDAQ, but fundamentally it's going to be a very difficult challenge for the government.
I see. It really is a complicated issue. All right, Professor Shin, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Meanwhile, South Korea's consumer prices rose 3.2% in June, driven by higher oil prices from the conflict in the Middle East. The Ministry of Data and Statistics said Thursday that consumer prices rose 3.2% on year, marking the sharpest increase in 2.5 years. That's 0.1 percentage point higher than in May, leaving the rate above 3% for a second straight month. Leading the increase were petroleum prices, which jumped about 25%. The surge contributed 0.9 percentage points to the overall rate of increase. Prices of agricultural and fishery products, as well as living necessities, also rose in the 3% range. And Korea's benchmark KOSPI plummeted at the opening bell this morning to below the 7,900 level, triggering a temporary halt on program trading. The Korea Exchange activated a sidecar at 9:07 a.m., suspending program sell orders for 5 minutes. The halt was prompted by a sharp drop in the KOSPI 200 futures index, which tumbled 6.05% to 1,255.94. A sell sidecar takes effect when the futures index falls by 5% or more for over a minute. The KOSPI dropped more than 5% in morning trade, dropping below 8,000 points to the 7,800 range. As of 9:30 a.m., the benchmark index stood at 7,815.08, nearly 6% down from the day before. And Wall Street also closed lower on Wednesday as selling pressure continued in AI-related semiconductor stocks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 13.96 points to finish at 52,305.24. The S&P 500 fell 16.13 points, or 0.22% to 7,483, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite dropped 173.69 points, or 0.66% to close at 26,040.03. Chip stocks led the decline, with U.S. memory chip maker Micron Technology plunging over 10%. The weakness reflected continued selling in AI-related semiconductor shares as investors reassess valuations following the sector's sharp gains this year. Over in the Middle East, U.S. President Donald Trump says talks with Iran are progressing well, with both sides reporting positive momentum following a new round of negotiations in Qatar. The discussions focused on maintaining a ceasefire, securing shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and advancing efforts toward a broader agreement between Washington and Tehran. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The United States and Iran reported further progress on Wednesday as the two sides held another round of talks aimed at preserving a fragile ceasefire and ensuring safe shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking to reporters, President Donald Trump said relations with Tehran were improving and described recent meetings in Qatar as productive.
The denuclearization of Iran is moving along well. They've had very good meetings, and we'll see. We hit them very hard for 3 nights, as you know, but we're getting along very well.
The latest technical talks were held in Doha, where U.S. and Iranian officials focused on shipping arrangements through the Strait of Hormuz and measures to secure a lasting peace agreement. Sources familiar with the discussions said Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff met separately with Qatari officials ahead of the talks, while Qatar and Pakistan continued their role as mediators. Iran also announced plans to establish a communication channel with the U.S. to report possible violations of the Memorandum of Understanding signed 2 weeks ago to end the conflict. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi said part of Iran's $6 billion of previously frozen assets would be used to purchase goods needed by the country. Meanwhile, Qatar said the latest round of indirect talks ended with positive progress, with both sides agreeing to continue discussions after the funeral ceremonies for former Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei have concluded. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The death toll from the devastating series of earthquakes in Venezuela has risen to over 2,000. A week-long period of mourning has been announced as international organizations plead for emergency assistance. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
Rescue efforts continue across Venezuela for missing people trapped beneath collapsed buildings. Over a week has passed since a series of powerful earthquakes struck the country, but families of the missing remain at the disaster sites, holding on to hope that their loved ones may still be found.
I have a missing cousin. Her name is Freydalyn Subero. We are still searching for her. She was in the OPP 27 building complex, and from there, we don't know anything more. She was with her partner, but we have tried to search for them everywhere, in hospitals, on lists.
As of Wednesday local time, the official death toll had climbed to 2,295. The number of injured has also reached 12,267. The Venezuelan government has declared a 7-day period of national mourning in honor of those who have lost their lives. Acting Venezuelan President Delcy Rodriguez wrote on social media that Venezuela's soul is being torn apart by the pain of the lives lost in the earthquake. Some 59,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed by the twin earthquakes, which hit seconds apart with magnitudes of 7.2 and 7.5. according to Oregon State University researchers using satellite images. The International Rescue Committee said disruptions to water and electricity supplies are making it difficult to secure safe drinking water and maintain proper sanitation. The United Nations World Food Programme appealed for $50 million in funding to provide emergency food assistance to as many as 5,000 people over the next 3 months.
Recovery will be a marathon, not a sprint. Sustained support for the people of Venezuela is critical, and it's exactly what we're doing.
The World Health Organization also warned that Venezuela's healthcare facilities have exceeded their capacity, raising the risk of a major outbreak of infectious diseases. Seong, Arirang News.
One of Korea's biggest food events, the annual Chimac Festival, is now underway in Daegu. Despite the sweltering heat, visitors are gathering to enjoy the country's favorite summertime pairing, fried chicken and ice-cold beer. Our correspondent Hong Se-jung was there.
The 2026 Daegu Chimac Festival officially got underway Wednesday at Turyo Park in Daegu. The festival celebrates Chimac, Korea's beloved combination of crispy fried chicken and ice-cold beer, or 맥주 in Korean. As Daegu is one of the hottest places in Korea during the summer, local residents as well as others from across the nation gathered to beat the heat with some Chimac. Beyond ice-cold beer and fried chicken, the festival features water shows, EDM parties, and interactive events, offering visitors even more ways to cool off and have fun. Visitors said the festival gave them a chance to make lasting memories while enjoying the lively summer celebration.
Just being outside, enjoying cold beer and fried chicken, watching performances, dancing, getting splashed with water, it's just so much fun.
I came here to make memories with my family. Since we don't get to spend much time together, it was nice to enjoy some food and have fun as a family.
It's great. I like the chicken and the beer. The sound is good and I like the slightly old songs.
Activities such as EDM parties and beer pong added another layer of fun to the festival. More attractions are still to come, with water concerts, chicken eating contests, and beer chugging competitions scheduled through Sunday.
The Chimac Festival is expected to draw in at least 1 million people from across the country. Celebrating the attractive pairing of fried chicken and cold beer is something people just can't miss. Hong Se-jung, Arirang News, Daegu. 짠!
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh said inflation risks have eased in recent weeks, but the Fed is determined to bring inflation back to the U.S. Central Bank's 2% target. Warsh also pledged to keep the central bank independent, pushing back against President Trump's repeated demands for rate cuts. Speaking at a central banking forum in Portugal on Wednesday, Warsh said inflation expectations had come down over his first 4 weeks in the job and vowed the Fed would deliver price stability. He declined to say whether the bank would raise rates at its meeting later this month, sticking to his refusal to offer forward guidance and calling the coming debate a, quote, good family fight. Warsh said the Fed would remain free from political pressure, noting the Supreme Court ruling this week that let Governor Lisa Cook keep her job reaffirmed how the bank earns independence by meeting its goals. U.S. President Donald Trump's personal income surged past $2.2 billion in the first year of his second term, with cryptocurrency ventures bringing in $1.4 billion and dwarfing his famed real estate empire. Financial disclosures showed on Tuesday that his companies received almost $800 million from World Liberty Financial, the crypto venture he and his sons co-founded, plus another $635 million in meme coin royalties. That crypto income leaped ninefold from the previous year. His golf and resort revenue also rose 15% to over $500 million, with Mar-a-Lago income jumping to $77 million. Trump's investment accounts more than tripled to at least $858 million, logging over 20,000 trades last year. A White House spokesperson said neither Trump nor his family has ever engaged in conflicts of interest. In Mexico City, 4 people died during late-night street celebrations after 1 million fans celebrated Mexico's World Cup win over Ecuador. City health officials said on Wednesday that 3 people died of asphyxiation along Paseo de la Reforma, where giant screens had been set up for the match, adding later that another man had died following seizures. Authorities gave no further information regarding the deaths. However, local media reported that a deadly crush was triggered by pyrotechnics that sparked panic, sending people running and trampling others. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum said prosecutors would investigate and urged fans to celebrate responsibly ahead of Mexico's last 16 match against England on Sunday. In New York, police arrested a Russian couple after they scaled the antenna of the Empire State Building on Wednesday and unfurled a banner about the power of love in what appeared to be a high-altitude marriage proposal. Dressed in black and wearing masks, but apparently without safety tethers, the pair balanced on a narrow ledge more than 1,400 feet above Manhattan. Helicopter footage showed one appearing to get down on one knee while the other examined a ring. When officers climbed up to intercept them, an off-camera voice replied that the couple were engaged. Both were taken into custody and no one was injured.
The monsoon rain is taking a brief break today, but don't put your umbrella away just yet. Most inland regions could see heavy passing rain of 5 to 60 millimeters this afternoon, along with strong winds and thunderstorms. Meanwhile, Jeju-do Island will see some lingering monsoon rain of around 5 millimeters through the morning. And despite the break from steady rain, with the humidity staying high, it's going to feel muggy and uncomfortable throughout the day. Most major cities will see highs of 29 degrees Celsius, but Daejeon will be slightly warmer at 30 degrees Celsius this afternoon. But feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher than these indicated temperatures. Looking ahead, monsoon rain returns to Jeju tomorrow afternoon as a stationary front moves up north. On Saturday, rain will spread across southern parts of Korea, then expand nationwide by Monday, bringing the first monsoon rain of the season to the capital area.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.